It's making me dig deeper and reach out to people I respect and pray. Somehow there's got to be an end to this.
First at 5, a 4-month 9 and 10 News investigation has uncovered new information about this former priest removed from the ministry 17 years ago over a credible claim of sexual misconduct involving a minor. Back in 2002, then Father Jim Holtz was permanently removed from ministry. He's accused of sexually abusing a minor in the 1980s. Myself and chief photojournalist Derek Law recently discovered Holtz had a volunteer position working around minors at a church in the Diocese of Gaylord as a sacristan. Now, a sacristan is someone who works in a room at a Catholic church called a sacristy, where priests, altar servers, and other parishioners prepare to celebrate Mass. Here now is part 1 of our special investigative report, Betrayal of Trust. To fully understand this story, we have to go back to November, when 9 and 10 News first started reporting on priests credibly accused of sexual misconduct with minors in the Diocese of Gaylord.
The Catholic Diocese of Gaylord released a list of every priest accused of sexual misconduct in its nearly 50-year history.
And this comes amid a growing focus across the country on clergy sex abuse.
This is the list of 10 priests the Diocese of Gaylord made public on their website. This priest, Father Jim Holtz, was pastor in Fife Lake and Kalkaska when he was removed from the ministry in 2002. He's accused of sexually abusing a minor in the 1980s. That is when the phone calls and emails started. That name and this face strikingly familiar to people around Petoskey, including Joni Hessler.
I was given information about him, and I was told ahead of time that was going to rock my world, and it did.
Joni says her 3 sons were all altar servers here at St. Francis Xavier in Petoskey. She says the man who was in the sacristy with them as they prepared for Mass was Jim Holtz. The man who just years earlier had been permanently removed from the ministry over a credible allegation of sexual misconduct against a minor.
Were there times that your sons were alone in the sacristy with Jim Holtz?
Absolutely. Absolutely. There's not always another adult.
Joni told me her sons were with Holtz in the sacristy. At the same time, they lost their father.
Especially the ages of my boys, my youngest one, there couldn't have been a more vulnerable time in his life, everything he was going through, and their safety and well-being were put at risk.
Joni says her sons told her nothing inappropriate ever happened between them and Holtz, but she says she had no idea about Holtz's past until recently.
I'm not saying I'm here to judge anybody. Somebody with a known background shouldn't be allowed around children. And I think about the other servers and why? Why was it allowed? And why are we all hurting now? Because it was allowed.
As we work to answer that question, 9 and 10 News obtained a copy of this letter sent to Gaylord Bishop Stephen Reka in January of 2016. It outlines a moment from late December of 2015 where Holtz appeared to get too close for comfort. It reads, quote, "I witnessed Father Jim Holtz, sacristan, standing behind a freshman male altar server with his arms around the young man and began to attach and tie the cincture for the young man at the young man's navel from behind." The letter goes on to say the action by Holtz was seen as possibly suspicious, and the writer of the letter is reporting it to the diocese per diocesan policy. The writer goes on to say, "I confronted Father Jim by myself in the sacristy after Mass regarding the inappropriate nature of this action, and he agreed and appeared compliant." The writer also says they notified the pastor of St. Francis and asked for any further action to take. 9 and 10 News spoke with the altar server mentioned in this letter. We are concealing their identity.
Take me to December when you were back there with him.
I was going to altar serve that day. As I was putting on the robes, there's a rope that goes around our waist. He said either I was doing it wrong or there was a better way. And he came up behind me and He put his chin on my right shoulder and then put his hands around my waist and started to tie the rope. And it was awkward.
The altar server says learning of Holtz's past brought the incident in the sacristy to a whole new light.
Knowing his past and the reasons that he was removed from the priesthood, looking back, I should not have been in a situation like that. I've asked myself if this has really happened, if I'm a victim, and I guess with the looking back at the situation and then looking at the fact that I do have to ask myself that question is evidence enough that I am a victim in a sense.
Bringing a lot of questions to the table.
Yep, that is part one. We did work tirelessly to reach Holtz, including a Facebook message. We sent him a letter, knocked on his door, also called him. You will hear from him coming up tonight on 9 and 10 News at 6 in part 2 of our special report. You will also hear from Gaylord Bishop Stephen Reka. He had a couple of surprising things to say to me about how the diocese handled the situation, so stay tuned.
Yeah, interesting to hear from him. And we do want to mention that online we've posted resources, and as if you are one of these people who's become a victim, how do we handle that?
This information coming out at the same time that the Attorney General is looking into Catholic clergy sex abuse across the state. They're asking for any information to be reported to them. We have a link to do that on 9and10news.com.
All right, looking forward to see part 2. Thank you, David.